So let me go check them. Give me a second. Okay.
Casey, how you doing?
Hey Jan, how are you? Good to see you.
Good, you too. Did you take any vacation yet?
No.
Shame on you.
I know.
Be ashamed of yourself.
We're trying to find some days to sneak away.
We're gonna go to the beach.
Hopefully Rehoboth or Dewey or something. Just to.
Yeah, even 24 hours away makes a big difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Yeah, I hit my fall. And then we started doing the.
Doing the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the system's 22 years old, so you know.
Upgrade, I guess.
It's almost.
Do you lose electricity here a lot?
We do.
Hello.
The
We do.
storm is coming in till 6:15. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're on full background check.
If we
It's
do,
still gonna be interesting.
be back in the shed,
Says
underneath
till about
the one
6:15 tonight.
in the back left corner.
Storm
There
board
is
here.
a wood bucket that I think has oil, funnel in
I'll
it.
be till 6:15.
Okay?
Yeah, agenda?
Yep. so-
Back here, and then.
Wall.
No.
What's new? What's new? Your old building's vacant up and down.
I know.
What was that key?
I'm depressed about it, but it's what's happening out there in the industry, so.
Just shut the building down? Well, that was what
People,
key.
it's all about, it's all about logistics, and it's all about traffic, traffic going through the building and stuff.
There's nothing else up there. I mean, up at 10 and 30, but
Again, you gotta look at the stats, you gotta look at, the deposit size, you gotta look at where people are friendly.
Well,
People are friendly.
yeah, a friend of mine is a manager
Hey,
with
Doug, how are you?
S&T,
Oh, yeah.
and he said they're constantly like, well, at least DNB was always like, you gotta get deposits.
They shut down the one right before Route 1.
No, they didn't, they just moved
Where they moved?
into the shopping center where John is.
So I brought
What is
you
that,
this for everybody. to
Gilmore?
know.
Shopping
Why
center?
don't you do that?
I didn't know if they were. or not.
They own that building.
Yeah. Now they're in a space where I guess they get more people. That was a tough spot to get in and out of.
I don't know. I guess.
Hey, Chris.
Hi. So this is.
Yeah.
This is the next slide.
Yeah, so.
What was that?
No, I think Casey said they're gonna do it 20th. Between you and I.
Wow.
Get it?
I'm not sure. He might be dinner.
We just got a Avalon, so I'm going down as much as I can. Work there.
Good evening, how are you? Good morning, thank you.
Thank you. I know.
We're going to do this in 11.
Yeah, let's.
I have to say.
Let's go. It's not in for a while.
I quit walk and bike. Kids are there.
There's about a 12-second delay between off and on, so, and it'll definitely blow us up.
Like the whole atmosphere.
Oh, yeah, we're actually streaming right now.
Sound.
Just in case. Done?
My kids are there all the time. First time there was that job in shore.
Yeah, it's, there's, it's a compromise, and I'm grateful for listen to, so, like, the community space.
22, 28. My 20-year-old is so I could be like there's I wanted I was born very my work she ended up, so she ended up getting a position in first and it's phenomenal. So that's my daughter, but her boyfriend had approved this
And that's the start, and so I would imagine.
my other two are working in the service how difficult it is making tips.
I'm sure they will. So they just
But you know what, they're both appreciate how hard
Whereabouts.
I mean, just really appreciate it. And they're not rude people, like they're making stars, they're not rude people, but just seeing that
Oh, they're
rude and realizing that it affects you, you know, like it's
I know.
The foundation is in Church Avenue, right next to the safety. That's going along.
Yeah, I said there's just one job. Nice to see you.
Tina, you, good to see you. I reached out to my office, I did speak to somebody, but after the scheduling first, so I said, she was contacted. I did talk to him, but really, he's planning on doing one there on August the 23rd. He's going to do someone this year, he's going to rent the whole place so one is they're closed anyway. So what I understand, no, I'll catch up with you in a second. If we could do it just a couple of hours, you know, maybe we can.
Might be Katie. It's not.
Yes.
Very accommodating.
Yeah, they are.
I just didn't know if it was booked to the manager. She's willing, she's always involved. And so I have to either go to my reserve if it's canceling it, so I said I reserve it, and I want to talk to you about it. She's willing to do whatever we want. She says, I know it's for charity, it's for money. So she took $2
They
out.
always are very good.
Yeah, so she took anywhere, you can get what's on the website, things like, everybody else stuff. Or you can just do like first week, and she'll do whatever you want. But if you look at their website, they have packages, and she said she'll do whatever we want. And
So would we have the room next to the,
private one, it holds 80 people.
have you ever been there before?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, really nice.
We've been there many, many times.
Yeah, she's very accommodating, and she said, as far as the bar, she said you can either have cash bar, or you have, say like the limit's $200. So instead of $200, and then $200 for the start paying. Or even $150 or $100 or whatever you want to say. They do not want to
I would
cash
think
bar.
wonderful, that whomever comes that they want, buy their own alcohol, that way, not only that, it eliminates anybody.
Yeah, I mean, the options are so plentiful. It depends on what you want.
I think,
Yeah. And you walk out, clean up, do everything, you walk in, you walk out 2 hours and you're done.
well, they're more like designed for them to sit there, the tables and all that, which is okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Or she said, why don't we have reserves instead of a meal? I said, you could get that too, and that's cheaper. That's like $5 cheaper to have reserves. So,
how do you feel? I'm going to keep this thing rather short and loose,
yeah, that's why I think it's
rather than making a formal concept.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just board suit, it's not like we're allowed to study sessions.
Well, it's cheaper. It doesn't advertisers too. She'll have a couple of them set out, whatever you want. It's cheaper. So as it gets closer, if you want to go over, you set the menu.
Why don't we do that? What's your schedule?
Or get it ready to be 5:30, sort of. Goshen Township at 5:30, and then have all that stuff. Goshen. So then I have 7 o'clock, so we're 30 minutes here. So I gotta get ready for tomorrow.
Well, maybe we can push it back to, maybe, well, I can't do it Friday.
Thursday might be okay.
Well, maybe 3, okay.
She comes in after 3 o'clock.
Oh, okay, that's why you're saying that. Why don't we figure Thursday is 3?
Yeah, that's the other thing. They normally want $100 deposit with the date. She's well,
So you already penciled this in, right?
pencil this in. You can always cancel.
Let's go, I know. Let's go ahead and go over there on Thursday. I'll give Nancy a call, see maybe she can come up with Nancy. I'm sure she would.
Yeah, get her in the call. That's great.
How about if I call you more than
Menu.
that?
Yeah. Okay, and then I'll call her and make sure she's there.
Okay.
If
Pottstown.
How
How are you?
Good email exchange, answer questions. I'm gonna ask you a question too about he's on his way back to the master plan to do, so.
Yeah, I just for clarification, I want to go into it, I want to understand how going forward.
It's a little closer.
I can see that going forward. Various, accommodated, setback is.
She should have.
I'm sure she will. Thank They have an email address.
I have.
Like I said, I wouldn't have that.
I think sure. Yeah, fully agree.
Yeah, the target. You're gonna be moving away from me. I'm just curious, I'm at the issue, kind of got. In order to that
It's all the same board of supervisors.
yeah, we were talking about it.
We have what's called a
I thought we had
workshop.
some ahead of yeah, we actually going to talk about it. It looks like the draft now is different than the one we were put in.
Yeah, because
Originally, the workshop designated more.
she added some. Which we never
Yeah. So what we found is such a regular business that we
We're catching up with these things.
So we try to do more discussive elements.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Workshops, we also take care of.
That's one of those driving. Because he
Well, the board of supervisors only has 2 meetings a month, but there are other meetings like the commission, they're all, so they all have their own.
I thought today, I was sure I have to take my next
came back to those sandwich. We did pretty good.
Mike McCord, he's one of our board they go down every year.
The agenda's posted on Friday.
He said that he came back early. He came back this. We needed some help. So he came back.
Well, it takes a while.
And he said it took
To write
him.
them up.
Okay, awesome, thank you, thank you.
Well, everybody had to be back.
Hello everyone, welcome. Welcome to the July 6th West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors workshop meeting. To start the meeting, if you could please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So just for your information, the meetings are live streamed on our YouTube channel. Last meeting, unfortunately, we had a problem with our power pack with the tail lines, but hopefully tonight it's shared if that's the case. And just please be aware that other members attending may use audio or video recording equipment this evening. So our first agenda item tonight is number 3 on the agenda, public hearing on possible adoption of ordinance number 10, 2021, the Westchester University zoning overlay. Kristen, would you like to just remind us, give us some background about the journey we've been on with this?
Sure. Because this is an amendment, to the township zoning ordinance, there are procedural requirements that the board has to follow before they can have this hearing. So I want to just go through that and make sure that the minutes reflect that we did whatever, it's called the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. That's the state law that governs the process for amending the zoning ordinance. So we had to advertise tonight's hearing twice for 2 consecutive weeks, and we did that in the Daily Local News on June 15th and June 22nd. I put before all the board the exhibit packet in case you want to go along. And I have one, Mr. Nagel, if you want an extra copy, if you're involved in this. The second is, because I only did a summary of the ordinance when I advertised it, we also have to make a full copy of the ordinance available for public inspection. And we do that by sending a copy to the law library in Westchester as well as to the Daily Local. And I did that on June 8th, 2021. We have to also, because this particular zoning amendment also involves a map change, and we are basically creating a new zoning district, an overlay district. Anybody whose property is proposed to be included in that zoning overlay district needed to be, the properties had to be posted. So the affidavit of posting was completed by Bill Webb, and I have that as an exhibit B3. They were posted on June 23rd, 2021, and we also have photographs of the postings. The other requirement is that anybody who owns property that's proposed to be rezoned has to receive a notice of a letter of tonight's hearing, 30 days in advance of tonight's hearing. And we sent those letters out, my office sent those out on June 2nd, and I have an affidavit of mailing from my paralegal. The West Goshen Township Planning Commission has to review the ordinance, and they've done that several different times. The most recent being the June 8th, 2021 meeting, and after discussion, the Planning Commission recommended that the board adopt this ordinance. The final requirement is any zoning amendment or zoning map change has to be reviewed by the Chester County Planning Commission. And this was done on 2 different occasions. So there are 2 letters from the County Planning Commission. The first dated April 3rd, 2021, and the second dated June 25th, 2021. One of the comments they mentioned an extra comma. I did take care of that today. But other than that, there were some other comments and suggestions, and I would tell you that if we wanted to incorporate any of those suggestions, we'd have to go back. We wouldn't be able to have the board adopt them tonight. So we could always make those, if anybody on the board felt one of those suggestions had merit, we could do those in the future amendment. To explain what this is about, this process started in 2017. Prior to that time frame, there had been some applications that Westchester University filed for development proposals, both in West Goshen and in the borough of Westchester. And both of the different ordinances required them to go through a zoning process called a conditional use hearing. The borough hired special counsel to participate in West Goshen's, and West Goshen hired special counsel to participate in the boroughs. And they're just really, that sort of made everybody think and ponder, is there a better way to have zoning deal with a campus setting, where a campus crosses municipal boundaries, and it sort of speaks, one of the buildings that was being proposed needed parking. And we thought, well, there's parking garages in West Goshen that are underutilized, and maybe you wouldn't need parking if you were able to account for the fact that you're a campus and that some of your uses can go across the municipal boundary and use buildings that are already in existence. So just sort of having that dialogue and discussion, both the borough of Westchester and West Goshen decided to hire a land planner, Tim Cassidy from Bernardin. And we started to think about maybe how other universities throughout the Commonwealth, if they cross municipal boundaries, whether they have comprehensive zoning. So that's how this process started. Obviously, the boards and the borough council, the people on those boards, staff, the zoning officers, the managers, there's been turnover in that period of time. And so this ordinance has evolved. There have also been private developers and property owners in the neighborhoods that have raised concerns, and I think both municipalities, especially West Goshen, tried to really take into consideration the comments and concerns that residents raised and made changes and edits to the ordinance. So hopefully we're in a position now that the residents that live in and around the university are satisfied, and that the Board of Supervisors is satisfied. So what it does is, this is meant to go hand in hand with an ordinance at the borough of Westchester. The council is their planning commission did recommend it to move forward. Their council was putting some final touches on it, but I believe it has indicated that they would like to move forward as well. And so if Westchester University would want to develop something, what the ordinance would require them to do is do a master plan process. Rather than look at one singular lot, they'll be looking sort of at the campus as a whole, and maybe they have in a 5-year plan 3 or 4 buildings that they want to build. And so they would be presenting a master plan, and with that master plan submission, they would also be presenting additional documentation that both the borough and West Goshen can use to evaluate what impact, not just the one particular building or use would have, but what the overall development or long-range plan is for the university. And those would include enrollment reports, housing projections and analysis, transportation impact studies, stormwater management, at least at a conceptual level, would be submitted with a conditional use application. What else am I missing? A parking study. So parking is obviously a very key component and in demand at a university setting. They would present a master site plan. They would present that to West Goshen as well as to the borough. There would be a conditional use hearing that would be used as the zoning mechanism to approve or deny the master plan. Once the master plan is approved through conditional use, which would also give the West Goshen Board an opportunity to impose conditions on such an approval, that master plan would have a shelf life of 10 years. So if the university were to get a master plan approved that had 5 different buildings that they wanted to build, they would have a period of time to be able to implement that plan. The ordinances would not be able to be changed to prohibit them from being able to build what they wanted to build. They would still have to go through a land development process. That's a separate, independent process. But so what this ordinance would do, it would vest a master plan from a zoning perspective, from a use perspective, height of buildings, area and bulk regulations relating to the setbacks. So again, it's really meant to be a collaborative effort with the borough and with the university. We had many meetings with university officials and got their, Mr. Nagel represented them and worked with us on language that made sense to them in terms of what types of buildings they think in the future are going to be needed. What do they call the uses that are there today? So again, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's really the ordinance in a nutshell.
Kristen, this makeup of this particular board has obviously reviewed this several times in 2020 and earlier this year. And so this version tonight, the one thing that we've been stuck on is the student housing. So this current version removed the ability to put student housing in PUC4, which the previous version we've been trying to work through the language that would have been acceptable on that. At this point, the university has decided that they, it's okay for us to move forward with this as is, and they're not, they're planning student housing is going to have to go ahead without this as being part of the overlay zone of West Goshen.
That's correct.
And all other aspects of this ordinance have been what this board has seen previously, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for Kristen on what we are today?
If I may, can you speak a little bit about how this ordinance will provide protection for the neighbors in the Roslyn neighborhood?
Well, none of the residential properties that are currently being used for residential are being included in the overlay. So I think there was concern that and this is just an overlay district. The underlying zoning district remains the same. But I think there was concern that by putting them into an overlay, that would encourage the university to want to purchase them and expand the boundaries. So the way these boundaries are set, which you can see that on the zoning maps, those properties are still just zoned R3 and they're not eligible to be used for university uses.
So part of this whole process of amending all that, the line for PUC1 particularly was pushed all the way up to Rosdale virtually and did not include any of the current residents. All the properties on here, I think with the exception of one, are actually owned by the university now anyway. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah. Let me look at the UC one.
Just the chiropractor's office, that's on the rest
There's no residential properties in terms of people living as a resident in PUC1.
So I just want to emphasize that the university is not going to be allowed to acquire and build or develop within any of the current residential properties in the Roslyn neighborhood.
I can't tell you what they can acquire. They're allowed to buy whatever property they want. Your zoning doesn't control that. They will not be able to utilize it for a university use.
Okay.
Unless they come and go to the zoning hearing board and try to get a use variance, which you can participate and oppose, or unless they petition a future board to amend zoning.
And then, I know you already mentioned, but let me just bring it up again for further clarification, the master plan. When might we see a master plan from the university? What is the trigger event that would make that occur?
It's whenever they want to go develop something.
So it won't happen until that occurs?
That's correct.
Okay. So it might be next month, or it could be 2 years from now,
That's correct.
or longer.
That's correct.
I recognize you have a question over there. Just finish the board first. Is there any other questions from the board on the ordinance? Kristen, I have one, I believe, a correction on it. It's on section 84-136, area and bulk requirements, B7.
Is that 126 you said?
136.
136, area and bulk, on page 13.
Perimeter setback, that sentence?
It's the last sentence, the front yard setback. I believe for PEC 2, this PEC District 2 and 4, it should be east, Rosedale, and northwest. West is applicable to the PEC 1.
Thank you.
No other board questions? Are there any public questions or comments about the proposed ordinance? Two over here. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
hi, I'm Jane Collins. This is my husband, John. We live at 854 South New Street, which is part of the redevelopment plan. I just had a couple of questions because when I was talking to, is it Mr. Webb? Is that you? Okay. On the phone, he said that it's not, our zoning will not be changed. It's still going to be residential.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay, so if the university wants to approach us and buy our property, we have the right to say, no, we don't want to sell.
That's correct.
Okay. What I don't understand is, because I don't know if you know where we are, but we're directly across from the South Campus building, and there's an enclave of actually 4 homes. One of them the university did buy maybe 20 years ago. It's the athletic offices. It's 848, I think, South New Street, or 850. So what's changing? I mean, could they still do that now if this ordinance isn't passed? I know it's going to be passed, but what kind of safeguards are in it for us as homeowners who don't want to move and?
It's not impacting your ability to continue using your residence for residential.
Okay.
That will not change. Your underlying zoning is still R3.
Okay.
As far as the other properties that you're talking about, I believe they're they're included in the overlay district.
Well, one is actually in East Bradford.
Okay, well, we don't control that in East Bradford.
Right. Well,
But-
actually, our backyard is East Bradford. Our front yard is West Goshen. So. But
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know the property you're talking about, whether it's included in this or not.
It is.
You're familiar with it. But as far as if a use exists today, the law is that the township can't stop that. No matter what, if a use exists today and it was lawful when it was created, that use can continue unless the property owner abandons it. So the university would have the right to continue to use it in that fashion in the future, regardless of what this zoning amendment does.
So I guess my question is, what's going to be different today as far as tomorrow
The process it's really for new development.
for new development?
It's intended to, well, it will impact changing of use of existing buildings.
Okay.
And new development where there's no building today and they want to put a new building in.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
the process, the rules that govern where the building can go, how high the building can be, that kind of thing. This
Okay.
is what that will dictate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mark Locker at the 2 West Rosedale. The university does own Children's Corner and the Swope Residence and the chiropractor, and it had a building that it knocked down at Roseland and West Rosedale. So does that mean that when the university buys one of these residences, it is no longer considered a residence?
The purchasing of the property means nothing. So who the owner is doesn't mean how it can be used. I'd have to know which specific properties you're talking about and whether they're included in the overlay. And if they are, then they would be permitted to change the use to something that's permitted under that particular district.
I think they might, some of them might be in the overlay because they all face West Rosedale. And so I'm wondering, as you said that there weren't any residential buildings in.
What I meant is there, yeah, I'm not aware of, please correct me, Bill, or
It
is
seems to
there
me
any?
they're just buying up West Rosedale, and it's like if they get Ventnor Avenue, they can put up a hotel.
There are no residentially used properties currently on Rosedale that the university owns. They're all commercial or university owned, and the only commercial one is the chiropractor's office. 30 West Rosedale is vacant. The daycare is vacant. They have a sign for overflow parking for the admissions office at the daycare center, but they have not used that for anything anymore.
So is that not considered residential? Because what the university does is they buy the property and they just don't do anything with it. It deteriorates and ruins our neighborhood, and then I guess they can consider it as something that should be knocked down.
I think,
It's vacant because they want it to be vacant.
well, I will say with regards to 30 West Rosedale, the university had a conditional use application before us many years ago, and then we started this process, which they withdrew their application, waiting for this all to come to fruition or be denied, whatever the legislative body decides, and then they would move forward with their plans. So yes, those properties are vacant today, but I do believe that the university eventually will utilize those properties for educational uses within the PUC district.
Is there any recourse for the neighbors against the university for just buying up properties and letting them rot?
We have a property maintenance code, so to the extent that there are property maintenance violations, Mr. Webb can cite them.
So Swope House, a case in point, they just let it fall apart the same way they did at the house on Roslyn and High. They're establishing a history of buying up houses and letting them rot, and then I guess the idea is, oh, this is past repair, so the neighbors won't complain when it's knocked down. And it affects our property values, and it's just an eyesore. They have a string of eyesores that they're building, or that they're acquiring. Is there any?
I just said there's a property maintenance code, so to the extent
Okay.
that any of the issues that you're speaking to violate the property maintenance code, it can be handled in that manner.
Thank you.
I mean, one thing I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kristen, is the idea of this process is to try to prevent that incremental acquisition of property by the university, waiting to acquire enough pieces of property contingent, next to each other, they can then build something else. By drawing these boundaries for protecting existing residential use and not allowing future educational use, why would they want to buy a property? There's a one lot value for them in the future. The idea is to try to focus master plan development and growth of the university in specific areas using this new ordinance that has defined limitations on what they can do in terms of area and setback, etc., adjacent to existing residential properties. So it's trying to improve the very situation, I believe, that you're describing has happened in the past.
That's happening now is the issue for me.
And also, if I may, in response to your question about a property that's been allowed to just fall apart, this had nothing to do with the PUC overlay ordinance that we're considering tonight, but there already are ordinances on the township books which would have our zoning officer here go out and cite the owner for the property being debilitated. So if there is that situation occurring, then you should inform the township.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. No, I know that's peripheral to the zone, to the overlay. Yeah. Thank you.
Are there other questions? So,
Dan Diskey, 07 Avenue. At the original hearing on this in 2019, it was stated that in conjunction with doing the overlay, that educational uses were at that point going to be removed from the R3 district where they were as a use by conditional use. You're saying tonight that they're not conditional uses in the R3? Is that already been changed?
No, so the definition of educational use will no longer include the university-type buildings.
So is there an edit being done to R3?
No. So in the R3, you can still have educational use, but that would not encompass something from the university. It could be Westchester School District. It could be another, a charter school or something in the R3.
But in the past, the university was able to put things on residential property.
Because the university uses were considered under the definition of educational use. They were lumped in under educational use.
So is
So we
the-
changed that definition.
Okay, so that definition is global to the zoning ordinance, not just to
Yes,
this?
that's
not
correct.
just to this?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
It's described on page 9 of the new ordinance, it specifically says, educational use, the definition of it exclude university educational facilities, private training schools, heavy equipment training, etc.
Okay, all right, and then the other thing, question I have, if someone gets a conditional use, just like, a regular developer, how long is that conditional use valid before they?
It doesn't, the MPC says that you have, it's not really that it's not valid, it's that if ordinances change, they can hold you to comply with the new ordinances. But I think it's a 6-month period before you have to file your land development plans that protects you from ordinance changes. But once you have a zoning approval, like a conditional use, that runs with the land. It doesn't get taken away if you don't act upon it.
Let's say about the 6 months, you have 6 months to.
To file your land development. If it's something that requires land development, you have 6 months to file your land development plans. It doesn't mean that the conditional use expires after 6 months. It means that if there are changes to the ordinance that impact your approvals, the township would have the right, they don't have to, but they have the right to make you go back and comply with the new ordinances that have been in effect.
Okay, but you still have the conditional use approval?
Sure, yes.
Okay, so all
Yeah.
you're giving them the additional protection from subsequent ordinances?
That's correct. And the thought process behind that is if you look at the types of studies and the analysis we're asking them to present with a conditional use application, it's very expensive and very time consuming to pull all those studies together. The thought process behind a lot of these studies is that we're trying to encourage the university to do master planning. We're trying to have them look at the global impact of their development in terms of what does it do with pedestrians, how are you dealing with your parking and your sustainability of your buildings. So we want them to invest money and time into putting together a comprehensive application that then can be used to guide the board in rendering a good decision that then everybody's happy with. We don't need to worry about changing the ordinance, and they know that they have to go get money from the Commonwealth to be able to build anything. Or private sources, so they need to have some reliability. This was a point of discussion, trust me. We talked about it quite a
I think
bit.
my comment would be, I feel like that's longer than I would do, but that's.
Yeah.
In your seats.
We do have something in here that if some of their assumptions and reports change considerably during the 5-year period, they have to come back and update those.
Other questions? Quite a few also. Just go to this lady here.
Hi, Lisa Heisey, 816 South Church. I just had 2 questions for clarification, probably for you, Kristen, and they're under the area bulk regulations. And the first one is I don't see that there's any use or there's any permission for a multi-level parking structure in the PUC 1. Is that correct? I see it introduced in PUC 2-3, but I was concerned about that with Sykes Union, and it looks to me that that type of usage would not be permitted. I just wanted to make sure that that was the case. It's 84.
Yeah, it's not listed under PUC 1.
So I just want to make sure that that was
Well,
the
but
case.
under E, accessory uses does allow surface parking lot, but not a structure. So you're correct.
Okay, thank you. And the other one that I had questions about is for existing lines. So for instance, the back of Sykes Student Union, there's a parking lot there. I'm wondering, since all of the housing and the parking lot is already in existence, how the measure of the property line and the setback would be met, and if, for instance, 25 feet parking setback from property lines?
Well, you look at all the properties that they own in a particular sub-district. So all the properties that the university owns in PUC 1 basically is draw a line around that as if that's the lot. And you measure the distance, the setbacks from that boundary of the district.
So if the university looks at these lines again and they can see that the setback is not sufficient, will that change? So for instance, if the parking lot encroaches upon.
Not for existing things that are there today, this doesn't have an impact on.
So it has
We
nothing
can't
to
make
do with
them
that.
bring it up to today's standards. For future development, we can
So
make them.
this is only for future development, so.
Or changes in use. If they take a building that's there today and change the use of it, this kicks in.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Meg Diskin, 807 Spruce Avenue. I just have a question about a property that fronts on West Rosedale, next to the car, but it's behind the pump house building for the geothermal wells. And at a separate rezoning hearing for that pump house, or maybe it was a conditional use for the pump house, it was stated at that time that the property behind the pump house would remain undeveloped. And I think, Casey, you know which property I'm referring to.
And if that's part of the conditional use order, then that condition remains. And
It
that's
remains,
binding.
even though it's in
Absolutely.
even though it's in the
Absolutely.
PUC one, that cannot be changed.
That cannot be changed.
Okay, thank you.
Unless they come back to the board and ask for a modification of that specific approval.
Thanks.
So we're here in front.
Good evening. My name is Allison Zaro. I represent BET Investments, BET Carter Drive LLC, located at 205 Carter Drive, which is one of the properties that would be included in the PUC overlay portion. We've been here several times, obviously virtually, and Michael Markman is with me this evening to talk about student housing. You touched on that at the beginning of your remarks. And when we were last here in February, we had talked about student housing being part of this district, but a relationship with the university. And as time progressed, we then were disappointed to learn that it has been removed from this final version that we received notice of at the beginning of July. So we just wanted to understand a little more as to why the board made that decision and whether there's any thought about student housing in that area in the future.
So this board was considering putting student housing in. We were trying to ensure that that became a relationship between the private developer and the university, would be some kind of contract nature, so it wouldn't become apartments and the university kind of walk away from it and have student housing become potentially something else. We'd also asked for some requirements related to student housing being provided with shuttle bus service, so that the concern of residents in the borough ward that face Rosedale would be, there was a concern there about the amount of student activity if there was more student housing in the PUC4 area. In fact, it reached a state of an impasse where the university was kind of tasked with trying to find some way to move that forward. We did not receive a response from them, and subsequently the borough were not interested in supporting the overall concept of a master plan that included zoning within there, within the borough. So because of the fact that they were no longer interested in student housing was going to be included in West Goshen, the whole process was stuck. So subsequent to that, the university president indicated that he would be fine if we moved forward without student housing, reverted to the original intent. It was a journey that started a long time ago that did not intentionally include student housing, is my understanding. So today we're at the point of having removed it from our previous version, and that's why we're considering it, so that we can get to a point where we end up with a master plan and address some of these infrastructure issues in conjunction with the borough and the university, and working through an appropriate way to manage growth of the university without it being a piecemeal, lot by lot, with limitations on what we can stipulate in terms of how development of the infrastructure that supports that growth could be done. So we'll see if the board supports it tonight, but that's the rationale for where we've ended up today. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, Rick London, 302 West Middle Street. The overlay for development, does that include the Robert Gordon Natural Preserve for Environmental Studies in its entirety?
It's in the class 3 area.
Yeah, close to it.
Yeah.
I don't know what,
That's what you said.
I don't know what restrictions are included in their ability of the university to do anything with that bill.
One, I mean, I know that years and years ago when this particular board wanted them to open up Stadium Drive, it was indicated that that was very much opposed by the university, and that would never happen because it's protected biological areas, sensitive resources. So I don't know if that's still the position of the university, but there was always much pushback on having the university develop that or utilize that for anything than how it's being used today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Any other public questions? Are there any final board questions or considerations? I have one. it's, as you know, one of the things that bothers me about traffic studies is the kind of approach that's taken, it's kind of by a rule book and everything else. And one of the things that everybody's noticing, and we're probably all guilty of it, is the increased traffic from package deliveries. So I noticed on my own cul-de-sac, there's 20 vehicles a day now that were not there 5 years ago. Some of them are coming to my house. So I just wonder, as part of the traffic study that's in section 140, if there is some way, Brian, that the university could look at what mitigations could be done for students within, the borough of West Goshen, and the amount of traffic that can be generated from them ordering from Amazon or wherever else. Is there something the university can do from a centralized approach that could not have as many individual deliveries, and just maybe a pickup process or something else? So I'm not hung up on it enough to want to change anything. I'm just saying it's something that I think when you do the master planning, when you do the transportation study, this is something that's new and should be a factor that's taken into account.
Yeah, I would assume, Sean, that the traffic study on that level would probably be doing actual counts, which would probably pick that up. And so you're probably going to have some look at the IPE plus counts, and they're picking that up, and it's driving intersections to levels of service that need to be addressed. That's where it would get addressed. But I understand your comment. I understand the current state of things with changing traffic flows. You also lose trips with those deliveries because you have one van coming through a neighborhood rather than everybody in the neighborhood going out to a store. So I've seen some discussion about that, the impact of that. I don't know that we know for sure how that all shakes out in the final analysis, but I know it's out there. I understand your question, and I will certainly make that comment when we go into a master planning process.
Okay, thank you.
Sean, just to follow up with it, that's something that you just raised that we can include in our consideration for the conditional use application.
Sure. And it's also something that if the thought process of how this would play out is that they submit a master plan, and one of the component parts is their transportation study. You're going to have your own consultants, you're going to have your own traffic engineer. It might be Rick Craig, it might be somebody who specializes in transportation engineering, and that's something that they're obviously keenly aware of, and would comment back to say, hey, I'd like you to consider this as well. Add to your study, give us some information on this type of, these types of vehicles that are coming to the university. And it may not, I don't know, obviously the university would know this more than we would, if those types of deliveries are coming to classroom buildings as well, or are they just going to, depending on what the use is, would there be that kind of vehicle coming? And so if it's clearly, a residence hall or something where you would have those types of deliveries, I think that analysis has to be included in the transportation study.
Okay. So you have a question?
So for the traffic study, Alex Ronnie, 34 Church Avenue in West Goshen, the traffic study, I'm supportive of the university expansion. I think there's some confusion when it first came out with the Roslyn neighborhood. I can't speak for all Roslyn neighborhood. But one of the questions I heard from neighbors is that they negotiated sidewalks in the neighborhood, especially along Spruce, with a lot of the traffic. It's not all the university's traffic, but that was a consideration during the misunderstanding. So if you're doing a traffic study more comprehensive, that would be something I suggest looking at for traffic, especially kids in that road. But also Route 100, or excuse me, High Street, which I know is not the Township's road, but the traffic along there, university kids coming out of the Wawa and back especially, it's only a matter of time before there's there. It's not really a good footpath along High Street. Some of it's up to the Roslyn neighborhood, which on the backside of everything, but also the lack of turning lanes. It's only a matter of time again. So put a stick on that. But that's not the university's all their traffic, but if you're doing a traffic study, I would consider those two things: improvements to High Street and also sidewalks along Spruce, especially.
Thank you for comment. Okay, so we've had board discussion, we've had public input. One last question.
I'm sorry, it's, I don't know what this is the time or place for this, but we're talking about traffic. And during the pandemic, obviously, the university there was nobody there, so Rosedale Avenue just, you go up and down as far. But when they come back, has there been any talk about reopening Rosary Lane to the one-way from going from New Street? Just because once they come back, it's going to be just a complete bottleneck. First of all, you have pedestrians crossing the street that you have to stop for. It probably increased I had like an appointment at 9 o'clock, 15 or 20 minutes more onto my travel time, whereas I could have just gone to Rosary and gone out.
Because you're coming up New Street.
Yeah, I got 854 South New and coming up New Street. First of all, you've got traffic at the light that goes all the way down past the Newman Center during that time of day. And I thought we were told that there was discussion on opening up Rosary. I know we have a very vocal Roslyn neighborhood that doesn't want to do it, but.
Can you turn on to Jones, or is it just Rosary that's a no?
Jones is one way.
Jones is. Could you go up and turn on to Jones?
You could go up to New Street, make a right, and then go down Spruce, and then I think it's okay that way.
Yeah.
But it's getting up New Street to make the right onto Rosary that it just takes an inordinate amount of time. And I mean, we were told is it was mostly because they didn't want university students going through
the neighborhood.
Yeah, but the residents are out of luck because it takes so. And I thought that I thought it was going to be revisited.
It hasn't come to the board. I don't know if township staff have been looking at it at all.
Yeah, that decision was made, I think, back in 2012 to close Jones. We have not come back to this board with that yet.
It's not been in consideration.
So what do we have to do to bring this up again?
You just did.
Will you listen though? It's just unbelievable on Rosary in the morning, I mean on Rosedale. Yeah.
No, I just would say that's a separate issue from what we.
I know, that's why I said I'm not sure whether it's, appropriate, but since I'm here, I figured I'd just say something.
Well, thank you for it. So, is there any other questions related to the overlay? Tina?
You can just use your mic.
Sure. I'm not loud enough for it.
No, you're not.
Well, if you're ready to entertain a motion, I'd like to make it.
Okay, so at this point, we've had a public discussion and comments. We've had a board discussion. So do we have a motion to approve ordinance number 10/2021 to approve the Westchester University zoning district overlay?
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Johns made a motion. Hugh was a second. Any final board questions or comments? This is a final chance for public question or comment. Okay, so we're going to take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? No opposition. Thank you, Kristen.
You guys, thank you.
Moving on, the agenda is next is item number 4, continued discussion of energy transfer, Booth Road pump station issues. So 3 items for review tonight under that agenda item. The first one is to continue discussion of West Goshen Township communication policy and process for events of public interest and scheduling a tabletop exercise to address both types of incidents. So, Casey, we left this with you at the last meeting to work with staff around developing something that we could use to inform residents within a certain radius of the pump station for incidents that involve not just emergency, but as described here, events of public interest. So they're notified to understand what the situation is and hopefully at least give them the information that allows them to get back to sleep.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, so staff and I were tasked by the board to come up with a communications plan for essentially the Boot Road corridor. And we'll work with Department of Emergency Services to determine a reasonable geographic area for notifications. So I want to go through a couple of things. First, the communications policy and the request for a tabletop planning exercise with DES. I met last week with our emergency coordinator, Andrea Testa, and Chief of Police, Michael Carroll. We had a very good discussion about and used the Memorial Day night incident as a framework of what happened and how we could improve communications. So what we decided was, and this will all be presented to the board at a future meeting for board approval to put this in motion. So what we're looking to do is there'll be a first line of communication for those events of public interest, where you have a fire truck or police showing up at the pump station. The general public around the area is questioning what's going on, whether it's 2 o'clock on a Sunday or 3 a.m. on a Monday morning. So we can use, the township has, for this kind of, I don't want to say entry level, but this starting level of emergency. We will use our West Goshen Connect, our Connect CTY system, which is a opt-in system for email, text, and phone messages to go out. Now, it's an opt-in system, so we need residents who are not in our system to sign up for it. There's a link right on our front page of our website, and what we intend to do is set up a special kind of pipeline pump station subset. We have several subsets already for park and rec events and other things. We're going to set up a special subset of residents who want to know if there is an emergency or something going on at the pump station or along. Now, mind you, we have 14 pipelines, so we're going to really have to think about this because we could have a contractor on a Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock use a backhoe and hit one of our pipelines. So we need to be not careful, but kind of really think about this pretty well. So we're going to really focus on our Connect CTY, West Goshen Connect system, to get as many people as we can signed up for it. The next level is the Ready Chesco system, which is controlled by the county. So if we do elevate to a higher level incident where, and given our public discussions, if the fire company incident commander, they discover hydrocarbon vapor outside the building, which did not happen on Memorial Day, that elevates it to the next level, where we would want to do a bigger notification, where Ready Chesco would come in. The county controls that. They can either send it out, or we ask them to send out a message. And we work on with Department of Emergency Services on messages and the messaging to clearly communicate what's going on. And one critical thing with Connect CTY and Ready Chesco, we can't just send a message out and let it hang there for 3 hours or 4 hours. I'm not saying it's going to happen every 3 minutes, but there has to be follow-up every hour, every 40 minutes. And we'll work with DES and the board to come up with a very clear policy on, we sent the initial message at 11 o'clock on Sunday night. At what point does it trigger a second one? And then there is the final follow-up message saying all clear, go back to bed, or evacuate, or whatever. So we're going to come up with that very clear policy for the board to review and put into effect. We're going to model it after West Whiteland Township did establish some type of policy, although I've not been able to get my hands on it yet, that they set up within the past year because of all the issues on Lisa Drive, because of the pipeline issues with all the construction problems they've been having. We're going to beef up our website to mirror West Whitelands. They have all the Ready Chesco and all the emergency response information. I think it's about time we took our COVID button maybe off of our front page of our website, but we always had a pipeline button on the website. We're going to switch that up for the pipeline to get that back on front page so people can go right there as another kind of public outreach now. And again, residents in this geographic area will be highly encouraged to sign up for West Goshen Connect and for Ready Chesco alerts as well. People apparently love when we send out the message for trash or there's a blizzard coming, get your cars off the street. And again, we only use our West Goshen Connect system for emergencies. We do not use it to say the bike parades this weekend because people get kind of immune and numb to the number of messages that come out from our municipalities. We only use it for emergencies. So we're going to stick to that idea and paradigm. And again, the Ready Chesco system, it's that next level event where again, we do have something more, I wouldn't say dangerous, but more, we need to get more information out. Again, Chester County controls that. We can ask them or they will send it. It's both ways. We can ask them to do it and they will also initiate it if the incident commander deems it appropriate. Okay. On the tabletop exercise, I met virtually last week with Chester County Emergency Services. They are more than happy to set up a tabletop. Now, there was a request to do a multi-tier, multi-incident response, but that is too much to do in one tabletop. So what they will do is schedule this, the event of public interest level, which is what happened on May 31st, schedule a second one where it's a bigger emergency, where you may have evacuations, where the incident commander will have the police and the fire company go door to door, knock on doors, and evacuate the residents. And then, of course, the third would be a catastrophic, again, a contractor digging out and damaging a pipeline, causing an explosion. But that is, of course, something we never strive to do, but we have to be ready for it. Now, DES made it very clear that this entry-level event of public interest, elected officials can observe. They do not allow, at that level, the public to observe, because it's training for the first responders, and it's almost used as an occasion, as training, to find gaps in your response and fill those gaps and make sure your communications are working. They do allow public observation on that second tier, because once you get all the kinks worked out on that entry-level event, you're ready to go with the second one. Everything should be smooth as silk, and you can have some members of the public in to observe, but not on this entry-level event. It's just strictly training and observation for the board. So we will be able to test our West Goshen Connect system with that entry-level event and see how it works. We will have volunteers, the board, staff. We will receive the messages to see how quickly they come. And typically the West Goshen Connect messages, as soon as I hit send on a TRAS message or a Blizzard message, within about 4 minutes, all the emails, all the phone calls have been sent, all the texts have been sent. So it's very rapid to get that messaging out. We just need people to sign up for it. That's the biggest thing. So we're working on a tabletop. At this point, we're looking at probably the second week of September for that tabletop to be set. We'll do it at the training center in South Coatesville. And we'll have Goshen, we'll have Westchester Fire, Police, everybody, all the stakeholders involved, and the elected officials to watch and to observe, ask questions, and then we test our West Goshen Connect system to see how well it works during that exercise. That's it for the first item.
Oh, yeah, so I have some board questions, a couple for me to start the conversation on. So in terms of who would be activating Connect?
Yes.
Are we looking, so let's just use the Memorial Day event as a kind of scenario.
Sure.
So Andrea responded to that.
Correct.
Would the expectation be that with this new policy communication plan in place, she would be the one, when the incident commander had given her enough information, she would be capable then of activating this communication?
Yes, that's what our intention is, and in our meeting with Andrea and Chief Carroll, there's obviously a police officer on duty as the command in charge, whether it's a sergeant or even an officer who's in charge at that moment in time for the department. Both Andrea and that officer will have access to the system to be able to send those canned messages out. Yeah. Again, within minutes of new information or the initial message. And again, I wasn't notified until 20 after 11. The incident started at 10:19, so I was already an hour behind. So having me as the chain of command, I was notified, but it was late already by the time I was notified. Andrea's notified immediately. Obviously, the police are dispatched immediately, so it's better for them to be sending those messages out immediately.
So do you think they're going to be sending we talked about having messages ready to go, so there's not a whole having to think about what you need to say.
Right.
So would that information be being provided as soon as she's responding, or once would be some kind of boilerplate message related to there is an incident we don't know yet, stand by?
Yeah, we intend to work with Chester County DES to create that initial kind of canned message.
Yeah.
That there's an incident of public interest at the pump station. Please stay tuned, language along those lines, to get people's attention and to make sure that they're turning on the TV, turning on the radio, and paying attention even to our social media and to additional text, emails, and phone calls coming from us from the township.
Okay. And then my understanding is it's the incident commander that determines whether it's an emergency situation.
Sean, I can't hear you.
Sorry, Walter. the incident commander that determines whether it's an emergency situation and the need to activate the chest go.
Correct. That is correct.
We're really waiting for that decision as to
Yes.
whether that's activated. So
Yes.
my comment would be, if we are very good at getting residents to sign up for our Connect CTY,
Yes. Mhm.
they must sign up for Ready Chest.
Absolutely.
We don't want it
That's
to
the
be they've
next
got one
line.
but without the
Absolutely.
other.
That's
So
the
it has
next
to be
line
joint
in the
sign.
domino. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's got to work hand in hand.
I'm sure I'll have other questions, but for right now,
Absolutely.
so board, what other questions do you have?
Yeah, and you mentioned 3 tabletop exercises possibly. The first would be a public interest one, much like what happened on Memorial Day weekend.
Right.
Then evacuation, higher level emergency, and then a catastrophic
Right.
one. You did mention the third one there. Who would be involved with the catastrophic or the highest level of emergency? Would the public be not only allowed to observe, but would they also be actively involved as well?
We didn't get to that level of planning in my phone call with DES,
Okay.
and that'll happen well before we plan that third level of tabletop. Absolutely. We'll get into those details.
And then my next question is that for each one of these levels of tabletop exercises, will there be a post-analysis generated to come up with the positive and the negatives that were found as a result of the exercise? In other words, make it a learning experience.
Absolutely. That's the critical, that's the intent of those tabletops. And DES gave us some kudos because a lot of our neighbors don't have this communication system. That is typically one of the recommendations that comes out of a tabletop, is you do not have a way, meaning a municipality, to communicate with all your residents at one time, one shot. We already have that in place, so we're already a step ahead of many of our neighbors who don't have those systems in place. So that is definitely what the intent of the tabletop is, to define and also identify holes in your response and to fill those holes with adequate response policies. And that's the intent of this.
And then my last question is, following from that, will there be an intent to develop an annex to the emergency operations plan? Dealing with pipe.
Yeah, we didn't go that far, but that can be discussed and raised as an issue, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Casey, if you're an East Goshen resident on the Boo Road side, would we allow those residents to connect to our Connect CTY, or how can we help them get the same information? And there's plenty of people in proximity in East Goshen, but they don't have a similar system.
Yeah, East Goshen has their own, I'm not sure what the product's called, but they have their own system similar to ours. So we would work.
Constant contact.
That's only for email.
Okay, but I'm sure that.
Yeah, there's lots of things.
Does that have the ability to activate that system as well?
Does not. That's the problem with our municipal-based government in Pennsylvania.
So
But we would work hand in
it's a
hand.
question to figure out.
Yeah, exactly.
The plan, this development, the
Absolutely.
plan, and the actual data complex.
Definitely.
So did you say that you'd be working with Andrea and the chief to come up with the policy? Like, are you actually going to write that and then
Yes.
bring it to us?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And work with DES as well to make sure we're not doing anything that contrary to their policies and procedures. Because obviously we can't work against them with the policy.
Right. So is that going to be available to us before any tabletop exercise?
Yes, we'll make sure we have all that stuff in place before we.
You have a feel for when that would be, Casey, looking at August meeting?
Yeah, probably the August meeting. We'll go over those and have them approved. It's plenty of time.
The way the system normally works is
I get told off, he gets told.
the way the system normally works is that the county radio communicates back and forth. For example, West Goshen PD is indirectly and directly, they have the capabilities with the second channel to directly communicate with for example, West Goshen to the police at East Goshen, which is WeGo. So that communication already exists.
And again, once we get into that second level event, it's all hands on deck across essentially the region at that point, with DES taking over, and God forbid it goes up to the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency.
Well, I think one of the lines of miscommunication that happened here was that on one hand, people were saying, Department of Emergency Services was saying, we're not going to send out something send out
correct.
anything
Yep.
that you want us to send out.
Right.
So, and I know it's up to the incident commander, like what level of emergency he deems it is.
Right.
So I guess I'm just wondering, like, how he or she would make that call.
Right.
And what involvement you would have in that, or us.
Well, once an incident begins, the incident commander is in charge of the entire operation. Now, the only drawback to Ready Chesko is it's municipal based. If we send a message about an incident at Boot Road Pump Station, our neighbors in Roslyn are going to get it. That's the only drawback to Ready Chesko because they cannot delineate. No. Whereas our West Goshen Connect, I can go down to a neighborhood, and we've done that. We can go down to 10 homes in a neighborhood and say, your street's being paved tomorrow. There's not that capability with Ready Chesko. It's just the entirety of West Goshen, the entirety of East Goshen.
So it's not like he has to ask to send that out. The moment that he says this is that level, Ready Chesko will be still
It should
taking
go.
it. Okay.
Should go.
And also, won't you, in your first communication, be the one that's, I mean, obviously you just said you're going to consult with DES, but you're going to control the message in that first communication and following up from those first communications.
Exactly.
You will have that level to be able to say, you know, give as much information as you feel warranted, obviously with making sure you're not contradicting anything that DES would recommend.
Exactly. That's correct.
This is just a comment, and it's something that we can either have to think about during the development of the communication plan, and it would probably come up in a tabletop exercise too. But sometimes events can start off, and there's just an incident of public interest, and then escalate to
Quickly
level
escalate,
two. And
yeah.
it's, we don't want a false start with giving you we've sent out something to just a select neighborhood, and
Right.
rapidly, so we need to work through that. And the tabletop exercise is a really good way to explore whether the process will work for that kind of escalation situation. It's not just one or the other.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Other questions from the public? Mr. Rabari?
Oh, hold on. Which one am I with?
Thank you.
Speak loud.
Thank you. Ambassador Berry, 1613 Manley Road. I grew up in first of all, my educational background is physics and engineering. I own a real estate company, a home inspection company. I train other inspectors in safety training. We received advanced safety training at Rutgers University. The thing that I want to emphasize is at last meeting, the two gentlemen spoke. They spoke like Michael Jackson, walking backward, the whole walk. The people in the audience were puzzled. I grew up in Tehran, Iran. I grew up, this is my home, that's the refinery. The refinery ran by British Petroleum, the most hated people in that country. No disrespect, Mr. Chairman. One thing they were good at was safety. I lived in the circumstances of boom when I was a little kid in Iran. And what happens is, every month, British Petroleum would have a place, either at the mosque or at the township building. In your situation, township building. In my situation, it was a mosque. They would bring a British guy, spoke perfect English and perfect Persian, and they simulated what may happen, and they trained those residents, hey, this is what's going to happen. If something happens like this, you have to do X, Y, Z. They will simulate potential explosion. I have lived through that explosion, and I knew what to do. At the last meeting, there were a lot of confusion. You have elderly people go against the wind this way. That's a joke. Everybody has a cell phone, integrated circuitry. You have a mechanical device in there. Clicks, creates spark. Go back to your home, shelter at home. Home has what's called a chimney effect. The gas is low, gets sucked into chimney effect. The building becomes a chimney effect. So you have to sit down, bring somebody in, explain it to them in simple terms, not a jargon. Do you think that petroleum company or that pipeline company concerned about your safety? They already have 10 attorneys like Kristen, and they have a budget in the case it goes boom. What I see here, you are not prepared. You are not prepared in a simple level. You have people in there, there are handicapped people in there. The one was behind the building, he came and spoke in this meeting. I have the video recording of it. So what happens is, it is best, bring these people in this township building, put a little table in there, a couple, whatever, bottle of water, bring somebody in there in simple English, not this municipality jargon, protocol. Somebody's going to read the protocol? Come on. When I inspect the building, I wear a device on my shoulder. When that device says beep, you know what I do? I get out of there. So all this nonsense about protocol, you're going to have the master plan. When that thing goes boom, fight or flight. You think that police officer with the gun, he's going to run to that? No. His mentality is designed to run away from that fight. You have all these people, what are you going to go, knock on the door and let them know one at a time? Bring them into this township building, tell them, hey, in the case this happens, this may save your life. You may have to do X, Y, Z. You run in this direction. Give them some guidelines in a simple English language, not protocol, not safety.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you.
Thank you.
And I didn't mean to be disrespectful about the British.
And I'll take it personally. Are there other questions?
I'm Judy Malache. I'm at 547 Court Circle. I grew up in the Midwest, and there's lots of tornadoes. So my question is, in addition to social media, electronic communication, in the event that an accident would happen in the middle of the night when most of the township is asleep, have you considered something like the siren, especially for those homes that are within the blast zone or very close to it?
We did, it got turned down.
That was 2000. That wasn't us. We didn't turn it down. Count. We didn't turn it down.
We just, the then chairman said that he didn't want to go that route, that fire sirens or sirens weren't, because that was something we proposed early on because we didn't know what we were doing.
But that would be a county response. That would not be a West Goshen response.
I mean, it's a good question. Certainly as part of a tabletop exercise, when the public can observe, if you're able to attend, or someone else could ask that question on your behalf as to whether it was an effective exercise, it could have been better than siren. It's an issue that should always be raised.
I sleep with my cell phone next to my bed, so I'd be out of luck if that was the only communication.
As a former incident commander, I can tell you right now that when you have a thing like that, what we have done in the past is that on a fire truck, they have a PA system besides an electronic siren. And we've gone up and down the street and advised people to wake up and get out, or wake up and be aware, whatever. So, and the police cars are equipped the same way.
Thank you.
Good to know. Thank you.
Other questions about this plan that we have? Okay, well, thanks, Casey. So the board's waiting for you to get it pulled together, and hopefully in August we'll do a formal review of it and have something in place. We'll be ready to take it on. So the second agenda item under the Boot Road pump station discussion was the nuisance noise problem that we've had. We've been talking about this for a little while now. Do you want to give us an update on what the latest information is, Casey?
Yeah, we've been in touch for years with Energy Transfer, formerly Sunoco, on this noise issue. And let me see, early last week, the township's point of contact at Energy Transfer in an email said that he and some of his staff members want to get together with township staff and 2 supervisors to keep it below quorum. According to the email, they apparently hired a sound expert. Yeah, I know, but I don't know. He wouldn't provide any details about what the results were or anything else. So obviously with the holiday,
Did it indicate that they'd already put some solutions in place, or they hired a sound expert to propose?
The email was extremely ambiguous. So he wants to get together to talk about what they found and maybe possible or solutions they've already put in place, but it was very ambiguous. with the holiday, they weren't looking to schedule anything, so I'll get with them, and I'm not sure who from the board wants to attend. We'll get that together. Okay, we'll get that together in the next 2 weeks or so, so we can get their list of whatever they've done. Because it goes back to 14 with, you know, the 8-inch line.
And then, it's been so quiet for the last week that it's kind of eerie, but the fact that...
Now, Walker, did since the May 31st event, the sound went away, correct?
It came back.
But it came back.
Came back.
Okay, and came back to the level that we had been experiencing for a year plus, 2 years.
2 years and lights.
Okay, so it went away with the incident, then came back a couple weeks later. Now it's quiet again? Okay.
So
I'm not even sure what to make of that, and we will see with energy.
Well, it sounds like they probably put some.
They put some insulation in or some solution in place, right?
I sat at a lunch last week with the new Joe Macero's underling. I don't know if that's the right word to use. And I said, hey, have you heard anything about the Boot Road pump station? She took my card and she said she would be in touch. So I was thinking maybe it was that woman. She said she would look into it. I don't know if that did anything or not. I was trying to find her card. I'll try to find it.
Thanks for taking care of it, because for the last 2 years it's been, but the last week, normally, like after the incident, they'll be quiet for 3 days while they fix whatever's wrong, and it ramps up again.
And then it comes back.
It hasn't, I mean, July 4th was so quiet.
Strangely quiet, though.
Without traffic, and it was eerie.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good, but still, I want to see what they do.
Yeah, we're going to meet with them. So the next steps are we're going to meet with them. Here, that hopefully they have put a solution in.
Yeah.
If it continues to be quiet, great. If not,
yeah, then we take this
then
to the
we're
next
going to go to
step.
the next step, which is we're going to send them a formal letter.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of give it the approach through the DA's office, enough time, or we would just copy them on our formal letter to energy transfer.
Right, that is the plan.
And at that point, we'd be also looking at what we can do with our own nuisance noise ordinance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the
watch
update
this
on that.
space is the status.
Right.
Okay, then the third question was potential concern about energy transfer equipment and activities on the property that's north of the fire station there. So.
Yeah, we have received some complaints or observations from residents that there was some structures or something, construction activity going on adjacent to the fire station. I asked and received an email from Joe Macero and the Energy Transfer stating clearly from Energy Transfer there is no above ground building facilities going on at the site, and we've had two separate staff members repeatedly go to the site. It's normal construction activity with them finishing up the pipeline installation, and they saw no evidence of any above ground facilities being built, which would be a violation of our settlement agreement anyway. So if we did see something like that, we'd go right back to the BoS and they'd have to stop because they'd be a violation of our agreement.
Just one question. They obviously had to install a big receiver launcher because did we ask Cooperwitz or Ruman if that was in violation of the agreement?
Well, any above.
No, it doesn't have to be above ground.
Yeah, it does. It does have to be above
It
ground.
has to be above
Has to
ground.
be above ground. We've back and looked at that.
Yeah.
So how do you install a big receiver
Well,
launcher?
do we know for sure it's a big receiver or whether it's just a connection to a compression test?
Well, they sent Casey an email and said they were.
Yeah, but that's probably from Mr. Communications, but it may not have got the right story.
So
we understand it was a pressure
we
test.
haven't communicated with Ruman or Cooperwitz.
No.
But we did go back and read the settlement agreement to see if what they described as being the activity that was occurring, whether that would be in violation, and concluded it was not.
A big receiver launcher would not be a violation.
It's a temporary situation.
Temporary situation to do a testing, it was not a permanent structure above ground that was installed.
Any other questions on Casey? Board or the public? Yeah, thanks, Casey. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Next agenda item is number 5, discussion and appointment for township elected auditor vacancy. So at our June 15th meeting, the board accepted the resignation of Mr. Dominski from the township auditor position, which creates a vacancy. And we have 30 days from the June 15th date to appoint a new auditor, who will then hold that office until the first Monday in January of 2022. And that position would be in the November 2021 fiscal election. So we received, I believe, 3 letters of interest being appointed, right, Casey? And we've shared those with the board. And the 3 individuals were Mr. John DeSantis, a John Riley, and a Cindy Shake. So the board's had those in your packets, the information is provided. Is there anybody wanting to make a motion to appoint an auditor?
I would like to appoint John Riley. He appears to be the most qualified individual of the 3.
Okay, so Hughes made a motion to appoint Mr. Riley. Is there a second for Hughes' motion? You don't have a second.
Sorry, can you hold the meeting for a second?
Come on, Bill, you gotta let him loose.
He's one that's
Could you tell where the noise is coming from?
Sounds like right here.
Hopefully it's just our fingers.
No Bill Luck complainer.
Leaves everybody one at a time.
Okay, it's our diligent cleaning crew cleaning this desk.
We're just glad you came back, Casey.
Okay, sorry.
So you made a motion, but there was no second, so that motion is not carried forward. So is there anyone else want to make a motion to appoint an auditor?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion to appoint Cynthia Sheik to fill the vacancy in the owner position.
Thank you, John. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ashley. Any board questions or comments about the appointment?
Well, I'd just like to say a few words, if I may. This appointment is going to be until the first Monday of January 2022, at which time whomever runs and is elected in November 2nd general election will be sworn in to complete the remainder of the 2-year term. Mrs. Sheik grew up in West Goshen Township. She graduated from Westchester University with a Bachelor of Science in Public Health. She's married and has raised 2 sons, having volunteered with her older son's Scout Pack and her younger son's Science Olympiad team at Preston. So she has deep and long-time roots in West Goshen. She has expressed interest in volunteering and being engaged with the township, and she is currently serving on the Sustainability Committee and would like to further her contribution to the community and to the township. So she is interested to run for this full-term position in November, but has requested to be appointed to fill this vacancy in the meantime. So I'd like to encourage the board to vote for her.
Are there any public questions or comments? Yes, sir.
May I address the board?
Absolutely.
Good evening. My name is John DeSantis. I was one of the 3 that applied. So thank you for the opportunity to present my qualifications for being appointed to the vacant auditor position. I believe that I'm a good candidate for the job because of my professional background, my leadership experience, my interpersonal skills, and my commitment to community service. Over the years, I've had several opportunities where I was responsible for financial decisions and money management. At a small level, I had done some coaching where I was responsible for running games and the team, but certainly the budget for the sports team and operating equipment and such. That led me to be, I was able to become an athletic director in the mid-90s for a few years, and as athletic director, my duties included scheduling and problem solving, but also managing the budget for all the sports teams. I was responsible for covering such areas as transportation costs, coaches' salaries, officials' fees, and field maintenance. From 2004 to 2019, I was vice principal at Bishop Shanahan High School. Along with these responsibilities such as faculty evaluations and scheduling, having meetings with parents, supporting struggling students and the like, I was in charge of the budget for the academics. This included such things as the standardized testing, the AP courses and associated fees, incorporating online classes into the curriculum, summer school moderators, and summer school courses as needed. My over 30 years of teaching and administration experience have helped me develop excellent problem-solving skills, the ability to work well with people in a myriad of situations, and demonstrate my commitment to the task at hand, whatever that would be, and in these cases, financial accountability and responsibility. Currently, I am a committee member for the West Goshen Republican Party. On the committee, I also have the role of treasurer. This experience again demonstrates my ability to manage and budget finances accurately and responsibly. I am the endorsed UP candidate for auditor for the November 2021 election. I won the primary in May, so this shows public support for my serving as auditor. And also, since Mr. Dominski was elected as a Republican, in fairness to the voters of the township, it is my belief a Republican should finish the term. For all these reasons, I hope that you would appoint me to fill the vacated auditor position. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Are there any other public comments or questions? Yes, sir.
May I address the board?
You may.
Good evening, thank you. My name is John Riley, and I also would like to be considered for the auditor position. I believe I am very qualified to fill the position. I have been a resident of West Goshen for 25 years, matter of fact, 25 years today. I have a degree in accounting from St. Joseph's University, and I have over 30 years experience in the accounting field. My qualifications with respect to finance and accounting stem everywhere from small $1 million companies up to $1.5 billion public corporations, where I was responsible for budgeting and financial reporting and financial planning for all manner of companies. And with respect, I request that I be considered for this role.
Thank you very much. Just like I say, I'd like to thank both of you for being willing to volunteer for this position. And I've always said, if anyone who wants to go to any of our committees, etc., it's an admirable thing to do, and thank you for being willing to do it. Are there any other public comments or questions? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We're ready to take a vote. So all those in favor of appointing Cindy Shea and Ms. Boyder to fill the current vacant position, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Thank you. We're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is number 6, discussion of draft solar energy ordinance. I believe, Kristen, that we had a look at this some time ago, in April.
You did.
This was the very preliminary draft at that point. So tonight, I guess you're looking for us to decide whether we're ready to advertise for possible adoption.
That's correct. There have been no changes since we first discussed this. This was something I think it was your sustainability. There were definitely a lot of Marine helped with this, and it's really just modernizing, so to speak, your ordinance section in your zoning that deals with solar energy systems, and it really incentivizes and makes the process easier. Nothing has changed other than one comment. We did send it to the County Planning Commission. That was what the last board action authorized us to do. We got a letter back from the County Planning Commission May 26th, and it indicated something that was not intended, that we, paragraph on page 3, where solar energy systems are permitted as a principal use. They're meant to be permitted as a principal use in all commercial and industrial districts, planned office park district, the multi-purpose district, medical services district, and the municipal complex district. So the way I had it written was industrial and commercial district, as if that was one singular district. So there was just some confusion. I think I just tried to make it more clear to say all commercial districts and all industrial districts. So that is one change that I proposed on page 3 under paragraph B1. But other than that, there are no other edits that I've made. I'm pretty certain the board was comfortable with this. This is what was recommended from the committee that worked on it.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a motion to advertise this for possible adoption?
I'll make the motion.
We've got a motion and a second, Casey. Is there any more questions at this point? Okay,
Okay, are there any public questions or comments on this moving forward for advertisement for adoption? Okay. Then we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Good. Thank you, Kristen. Okay, the next agenda item is number 7, discussion of a draft restaurant uses ordinance.
I'll start with the turnover bill. Actually, why don't Bill, you start and then turn it over to me? That might be easier.
Sure.
Starting from your suggestion.
So currently, our zoning ordinance is I would say it's a pretty antiquated definition. Currently, to be a restaurant in West Goshen, you must have 35 patrons or more, or 8 tables or more. If you don't meet one of those 2 standards, then you're not a restaurant, which means that from my perspective, for zoning, you are retail sale of goods, which is a less parking demand. We have a serious problem with the Starbucks. Before they took all the tables out, that Starbucks changed its model. It's only going to be a walk-in now, no hanging out. They took all the tables out. But the other problem is, we currently in West Goshen, we don't allow drive-through restaurants, but we have them.
But you don't regulate them.
We
You
don't
define
right,
them and regulate
right. We don't regulate them or define them, but we have them. So this now will correct that for any new uses. We also do not currently have any regulations on requirements for a drive-through. It's been looked at from a case-by-case basis by Rick. So that will also correct that in this ordinance as well. So basically, I'm proposing through this that we have a few different definitions for a restaurant. One of which is a standard restaurant, which we would all consider like a sit-down facility, like Pika's or the Stone or this Barney Stone. Then you would have your standard fast food restaurants, and then you would have your drive-through restaurants, and then we also have what we would consider a food stand. So basically, that would be like a food truck. We broke those out into the different zoning districts, and we didn't add any districts that didn't already have this type of use. We've just basically taken the districts that already have these uses and just plug these drive-through or standard restaurants into those areas.
As uses by right. So,
Correct.
so where you currently allow a restaurant use as a use by right in your various commercial districts, we didn't consider adding to those. We just kept those same districts, but now are using these new terms that are being proposed.
Correct.
And it's a by right use. That's not something that's conditional use, and that's obviously a board policy.
And the only district that allows for a food stand would be the I-2 district, which is where Levante is. Part of their model, they have food trucks. That's part of their model. So we figured let's correct that and allow them to have food trucks.
And also the Artisans Exchange, which is also I-2 on Carter Drive. They have the Korean food truck, and others come. And it just works well down there. It's the industrial area, so it works very well.
And the only other part outside of this is part of this change is to also change the definition of the construction sign. Currently, that's the last part of this ordinance. Currently, the definition of a construction sign only permits the builder or architect. This will now allow the real estate agent's name to go on there as well. But that's pretty much the gist of this ordinance. So it kind of corrects things.
And also, Section 8 is the other one. There's a limitation on outdoor area, on how big it could be. And I know with COVID that, I'm not sure that was, it seemed like outdoor dining became a much more, it did, became a more popular and a necessity. So the number chosen was somewhat arbitrary. So we've eliminated that there's a limitation on the size of your outdoor dining area. Now there'll still be other limitations because it'll be included in your impervious cover count. You'll deal with, you'll have to deal with it from a parking standpoint. But there's not an arbitrary set number on how large that space can be.
Okay.
So I have one question relative to fast food versus drive-through. So if you're a fast food establishment with drive-through, I realize here it says under drive-through or a significant portion. How do you determine?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you could be a fast food and have a drive-through.
Okay, it doesn't matter that you can be both, right? It's not gonna,
It could be both.
but if you are a drive-through, then you're subject to the drive-through lanes regulation.
Right.
Well, this
Yeah,
was,
this needs to go to the county
this is
planning.
just authorization for us to send it to the county and our planning commission.
Yeah, my motion is really to proceed.
But we have to go to the county first, or then we make?
No, we have to go to the county first, but what we could do, because of today's date, we could send this off and not have the other ordinance be adopted until, we could wait to do it at your August meeting? Your second meeting in August, because by then we would have the county comments back on this and we could combine them.
Yeah, that's the 24th of August.
24th of August, to advertise for both the solar and this, right, at the same time, just one.
One advertising.
That makes sense. Okay, so you made a motion to send this to the county? Correct. Thank you. Is there a second for that? Ashley's a second. Any other board comments or questions?
I do have a question, Kristen or Bill, either one. Since following from COVID, this board has allowed, the restaurants to expand into their sidewalk area and into the parking lot area, to compensate for social distancing and so forth. But now we're starting to back that off. But in this proposal here, on section 884.7.11a should be revised. The state as follows, and it says an area which is on the sidewalk, patio, or deck that directly abuts the restaurant, brewery, pub, or microbrewery building may be used for the purpose of furnishing food and beverages outside to the patrons of the restaurant. Is there any limitation on the area in which they can utilize in front of their building? And how would that allow for pedestrian movement back and forth in front of their restaurant?
John, if you look at the entire section of 845711, which I'll hand you, I printed it right here, there are other sections, B, C, D, and E, deal with outdoor dining. So there's an entire section today that regulates outdoor dining. The only thing we're proposing to change is eliminating the 1,500 square foot limitation. But there are other standards they have to meet.
Okay, all right.
So I'll hand you this, you can see it.
All right, good, thank you.
Sure.
I just have one question.
And I would say, I'm sorry, Ashley, I didn't mean to interrupt you. If there's anything else that you think should be added, now's the time to let us know that, and we can add that while we're working on this.
So are food stands only allowed then in that I district?
Correct. I mean, and if you, as board, if you wanted to put it in other districts, the only reason I put it in that I-2 is because of Monte.
Yeah.
And again, the artist.
But that's on a permanent basis too. I would say if you have a graduation party and get a food stand, that's not something that's a temporary thing.
Yeah, right.
And to be honest with you, recently I've seen some of the apartment complexes, and actually some of the neighborhoods have brought food trucks in for the neighbors to come.
Just
that happens a lot.
on a temporary basis.
Just for a night.
Yeah. Just like hiring a caterer or anybody else.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? He's already done it.
There you go.
Are there any public comments or questions on this proposed change to the ordinance? Okay. So I have a motion and a second, so ready for a vote. All those in favor of sending this to the county planning commission, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, next on the agenda is item number 8, discussion and possible approval of resolution 12, 2021, right turn arrow at Aram Avenue, Pottstown Pike, signalized intersection for Westchester Area School District. And under the board package case, it says right turn signal for Greystone Elementary. Could you give us the background on this one then?
Correct. We received a request probably 2 months ago now from Traffic Planning and Design. There's, as part of the Greystone Elementary approval, there was a required right-hand signal. So if you're on the new Aram Avenue turning right to go on Pottstown Pike north in order for bus traffic and parent traffic to easily make the right-hand turn. There will be a dedicated right turn signal coordinated with just the way it would work. The southbound traffic does have a dedicated left to come onto Aram from South Pottstown Pike. It would work in coordination with that. So when there is the dedicated left, you'll have a dedicated right to go north to get the buses out, get the school traffic out during normal work hours, day hours. So anytime a signal has to be changed, it's got to come for us and come before the board for approval.
Did you run the signal?
Yeah, well, we will. It hasn't been dedicated yet, but
So can the buses still turn right on red if there's no arrow for the?
yeah, but it's less safe, and it gives them a definitive window
But it's
to
actually
exit.
no turn on red type of.
No. They can still turn on red. Anybody still can.
The rest of the information you provided in the board packet was the standard information. It's,
correct.
Even to this agreement, we've gone along with it. You have made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Any other board questions on this resolution? Are there any public comments or questions? Doug?
Will there still be a right turn on red?
That was just answered, yes, absolutely. This does not prohibit a right-hand turn on red at any time during the day. And that's probably a school district policy, whether they even allow their bus drivers to do it, crafts or whomever. So that's an internal policy, there's nothing to do with it.
I'm resident off of Burke Road, and it sort of relates to this. Do they change the signal timing when school's not in session? Same thing, left turn on Burke. Would they change this? Will it stay the same even when school's not in session?
Yes, as far as I know.
Okay.
As far as I know. And again, that timing is dictated by PennDOT. We can't dictate the timing, but it should stay the same throughout the year.
Okay, we have a motion to approve Resolution 12, 2021 in a second. Ready to take a vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Next agenda item is number 9, approval of Township Board of Supervisors meeting minutes of June 1st, 2021. Casey had 2 comments on them, if you don't mind. So there's on page 3, there's a copied over cut and paste duplication on a motion that's pronounced. Start that. I just want to restate something you attributed to me, which was correct, but kind of needs a little bit more context.
Sure.
So it's on the second page, about halfway down. Okay. Mr. Walsh stated that this incident highlighted the fallacy of emergency response. So what I was really trying to say there was not that I don't believe in emergency response,
right.
but the fallacy of it being understood of how the residents needed to understand what was happening with emergency response. So you just say the fallacy of current problem with residents understanding emergency response. Which is really to Mr. Rivara's point a little bit. Certainly. People don't really know what to do with these types of incidents. Thank you. Are there any other clarifications or questions or comments from the board?
Make a motion that we adopt this change.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. Is there a second for adoption for approval of minutes?
Second.
Thank you, Ashley. Any public comments or questions on the meeting minutes of June 1st?
Well, if you could just add here about I just want to keep on stressing this. Update of the all hazards plan to address pipeline emergencies, specifically to add an annex to the EOP.
Gotcha.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I will.
Go ahead, Mr. Rivari.
Foster Berry, 1613 Mounty Road. I live in East Goshen Township. I have attended East Goshen Township for the last 20 years. Mrs. Kent, am I correct sometimes? 20 years maybe?
Long time.
Long time. And one of the things East Goshen has done, they always hired a recording secretary. Somebody from outside came in, just did the recording, secretary. It was very accurate. Everything was very precise. because the person is doing that, he has only one task. We have a brain, our brain can only do one task at a time. I'm not a multitasker. I compliment Mr. Lalonde. But over the years I've seen that I've attended this township's meeting, there has been some controversy. Mrs. Sword has brought it to your attention several times. It wouldn't be a bad idea considering that bringing a recording secretary, somebody that can only concentrate on that. Mr. Lalonde has a lot of tasks on his hand, and he has to multitask. It would be a good idea for a very minimum cost, and it would not create some sort of a controversy. And I think I've seen a lot of
We
these.
have a solution to that. So
I'm
the
sorry?
board, we have a solution.
Yes, sir.
The board had approved that the assistant township manager will be the designated secretary. Unfortunately, that wonderful gentleman is now township manager at East Goshen. So until we recruit a replacement, when we get the replacement, his purpose here will be to make sure the equipment's working and to act as the recording secretary of the township.
Mr. Walsh, I think it's an excellent idea. It serves the public well, so it will not, it will prevent accusations, it would prevent finger pointing. I have lived in East Goshen, very accurate, and I record everything, very accurate. Thank you, sir.
So we're on to agenda item number 10.
You need to vote.
Need a vote. Got distracted there. So approval of the meeting minutes for June the 1st.
With those two changes.
With those two changes, three changes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Very good. Now we're ready for the next agenda item. Approval of the bills to be paid from the general fund, the sewer revenue fund, the waste and recycling fund, and the capital reserve fund. We have a motion from Hugh. Is there a second? John or Ashley, a second the bill paid?
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a question, Casey.
Sure.
This month we saw, or in this bills to be paid, we saw a lot of the Express Scripts, prescription coverage payments. Is there a reason they accumulate and they're paid in this?
It depends when we get them, and it depends on usage. So we get ongoing running bills. That's why you see so many individual entries, is because we get individual bills for some prescriptions, depending on the price. So we're invoiced almost daily for because we're essentially self-insured. So that's why you see a number of Express Script bills.
So go back as far as January. Well, it starts in January, right?
Correct. Yeah, it depends when we get them, and if there's any. It goes through quite a level of claims approval at Express Scripts, and then they send us the bills. So they are paid timely by us. We just may not necessarily receive them on a timely basis.
Okay, so we're paying Express Scripts at this point, right?
Correct.
And they've already paid for that subscription back in January.
Correct.
So they're the ones holding 6 months worth of.
Absolutely. Yeah, we pay them as soon as we get them.
Okay. All right. Are there any other board questions or comments on the bills to be paid?
Yes, let me ask you a couple of questions. On the prepaid fund section, page 4 of 9, there's a couple items there. If you just can explain the thinking here. This is for per diem for Captain Domidio for 7/6 through 7/10. There's a per diem there of 246, and I figured this for 5 days per diem, and that has not yet, or it's occurring now. Is it, the reason why we're paying this because it would happen after the next meeting is the reason why we're prepaying it?
Typically, if we, for the past several years, especially the police, they prepay their employees if they're going to a conference. They prepay the per diem. We follow the General Services Administration per diem per day. So they essentially get a cash advance. They would be owed it anyway when they got back. So we give them the cash advance. They have the money to spend while they're there. Because we would have to refund them anyway with receipts.
Just looking at the per diems, though, I'm just trying to understand how the numbers were arrived. It looks as if, like for Captain Domidio, it's $49.20 per day, but then for, I'm sorry, no, that was $35.37 per day, and then for Leslie Holman is $47.92 per day. Is there any rhyme or reason to that?
It's depending where they're going.
Okay.
It's all the federal schedule, we follow it to the letter.
Gotcha.
And their travel days, it's only 75%, so that equates into the final total.
Right, so you follow the schedule?
Absolutely.
Who determines that schedule?
The federal government, we follow the GSA to the letter, yeah.
And the last question I had, just following through on that, there's a summer camp refund for Ms. Stephanie Meese, and what is that for?
She probably signed up and could not then attend, the child attend, so we refunded it for summer camp.
To her?
Yeah.
All right, well, those are the questions I have.
Casey, if we advance a bit day and then for some reason the attendee has to cancel, then it's...
They have to, they instantly refund.
Okay.
Any other board questions or comments on the bills? Any public comments or questions on the bills to be paid this month? Very good, we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of paying the bills, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Thank you. And then the last agenda item tonight is number 11, public comment. So is there any items that the public wish to raise tonight for the board's consideration? Doug? Yeah, if you want.
Take a walk.
Roadway 1001 Woodview Lane. Would the board please consider the idea of having a second bathroom in community park? I spoke to Casey, you mentioned about it was designed, an enlargement.
Yeah, that was, a second bathroom was put in the budget 3 years ago, I believe, and was not approved by the board at the time. So we have the plan and the design for it, but it didn't act on it in the budget, so.
Okay, is there,
Previous to this.
have you gotten requests from residents to,
I have none.
has it ever?
Once in a great while, we'll get a request, or just a, hey, can you put another bathroom in? That's all.
Is there a reason you'd be bringing it up, though? Is it some event or something you attended? There was a line in the bathroom for a while?
Well, personally, not me, but another township resident who I speak to wants this. And I thought maybe it's a good idea when there are events to have an additional bathroom.
Casey, is the issue really related to concerts or something else? Is there a particular events that drive a problem with the availability of the bathroom? Or
Yeah, that bathroom was specifically designed as a family bathroom, because it's just men and women. So, the moms have to take their sons in, and it just doesn't work so well. So that was the intent when it was designed, to have more of a family bathroom with changing tables and board's discretion. So.
Thanks.
Thanks. Is this something we consider infrastructure at all?
It is, absolutely. And it would be a COVID measure because it could be redesigned slightly because our bathrooms are 26 years old. They don't meet the current standards for air circulation, separation distance, all that kind of stuff. So that could be redesigned to be a larger space for a bathroom.
Is the splash pad consideration we're going to discuss next month or later this month, whatever it is that fairly close to this bathroom?
It's just down the path. It's just, this bathroom was envisioned to be an extension of the existing concession stand that's there, so water, power, and everything.
So would there be some potential savings if we were to do two projects at once? I know one would not be eligible for infrastructure, but bathroom upgrade if it was.
Definitely. Yep.
Any other public comments or issues to raise, Mr. Rabari?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Lalonde was kind enough to send me an email asking for a copy of Mr. Rabari's comment in previous meeting. I apologize, Mr. Lalonde, I was in training out of town, and with your permission, I'd like to approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I ask what the status of all this is, the clerk circle issue?
So, if you remember at the last meeting, the board was going to, had a motion that was withdrawn to approve potential handicap parking spot adjacent to number 516. We tabled it because it was felt that we would like to hear from the Crumbs, who are the property owners requesting the spot, what their objection, which they previously let know to the board, was, why they didn't like that location, just for the board's consideration. So at this point, they're unavailable this month, so we don't have it planned on the agenda to be planned.
Okay.
Okay.
Will we see that on a future agenda if we look up the calendar online? So if we keep checking?
If you keep checking it, if it should come before the board, if they're agreeable to that location and the board would want to reconsider it, then it would be on the agenda. And the agendas are published on the Friday before the Tuesday meeting.
Okay, so as long as we're not seeing it on the agenda, there isn't going to be any conversation about it or any decisions?
That's, as far as I'm concerned, as chair of the meeting and, looking at the agendas in advance, I would want to do it that way, yes.
Unless it's public comment, somebody could always.
They could come and, it would be on the agenda and then they would be here and raise it as public comment. It would not be on the agenda as a resolution to approve that either.
Okay, but if that were to happen, if they were to show up without letting you know in advance, that would be at one of these workshop meetings?
It could be
Or
either
any
of the meetings.
Or any meeting?
Yeah, either first Tuesday or third Tuesday.
But the following meeting would be when we would revisit approval or not of the resolution.
Right.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion to adjourn.
I do. So, the motion.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your attendance.
Thank you.
This is not your fault.
No. I'd rather, do you want me to? That'd be really odd. I'm like, it's all recycled. Are you working? Okay.
Let's try to watch next week.
Between the north and the
Anyway, glad to see your work.
My mom has always had Union Jack.
Hey, Casey. We're going to hit the end stream.
Oh, no, it's up here.